skills in the Division as a whole are one of the main reasons that the game interests me. I like being able to use the futuristic tech to take out enemies, as it offers a different way to play rather than just using my gun. It's part of what makes the game unique. Without the skills, the game wouldn't feel as special. But here in the Division 2, I don't feel that same power fantasy with my skills as I did in the first game. That's because the skill power system is in need of a major rework. And instead of just complaining that the system is trash and for Master to fix it, I'm going to explain in detail a solution that I came up with that I think would solve a majority of the problems with skill power and underwhelming skills in this game. But before we get into that, I want to first talk about the problems of skill power and why it needs a rework in the first place. In the Division 1, skill power directly scaled with the effectiveness of your skills. The more skill power you stacked, the more powerful your skills would be, whether that be the amount of healing you got from the first aid or the amount of damage your sticky bomb would inflict. The pros of the system are that you will always see benefit from skill power even if you decide not to stack it but maybe invest slightly into it. You can make hybrid builds with some skill power to make your skills a little more useful, or you could go full into skill power and make your skills godly. The main point being that you always saw benefit from skill power no matter how much or how little. This heavily contrasts with the way that the skill power works in the sequel. Skill power no longer scales directly with skill effectiveness. Instead, you stack skill power so that you can unlock mods that then increase the power of that skill. This system on paper sounds like a good idea. It gives the player customizable choices whether they want a skill to do more damage or have a shorter cooldown, for example, with many different combinations depending on the amount of mod slots a skill has. However, the current implementation of the system is very flawed, because now you only see an increase in the effectiveness of your skills at certain thresholds. And these thresholds are the amount of skill power that you need to unlock said mod. Let me give you guys an example. Let's say I want to use this mod for increased healing on my chem launcher. It requires 2088 skill power to unlock. If I'm just under that amount, then guess what? I can't use it and I get 0 increase in my chem launcher healing. Which means I'm essentially wasting stats into skill power that aren't doing anything. Or I have to use a mod that requires way less skill power but gives me hardly any benefit, which would also be a waste of stats. If it was Division 1 system, then I would see an increase in my chem launcher healing because no matter how much skill power I have, it will always be directly affecting my skills. Another problem that's caused by the current mod system is that once I get to a point where I have enough skill power to use the best skill mods, there's pretty much no purpose to have any more skill power after that. On this build right here, I have 3200 skill power. The highest mod I've seen required around 2800 skill power to use. Once I reach that point, it's useless to have any more skill power because my skills aren't going to benefit from it, unless we bring in the normalization factor. The only reason you would stack more skill power than what is required for the mods is so that you're able to use them in normalized settings, because your skill power amount gets shafted quite a bit when in normalized environments. This in itself is another huge problem with the current system. Now let's get into the solutions. I came up with 2 ideas that I believe would fix every one of the problems I just went over. A universal change across both solutions is to make skill mods work like weapon mods, where they don't take up inventory space and they are permanent. And then just have the effect bonuses like cooldown reduction or damage available in each category of skill mod. So for example, on the Seeker Mine, if I wanted to stack all damage, I could put increased damage percentage mods in all 3 of the slots. I'd have full control over how I want my skills to perform, and then decrease the percentage amount that you would get from the mods. This change would also allow players with no skill power to customize how their skills will work by just a tad. It wouldn't do much, but it would be something. And you're probably thinking that I'm crazy for saying this right now, but I promise you this will make a whole lot more sense in a minute. Solution number 1 is to simply make the effectiveness of skills scale with skill power like in the Division 1, except for the cooldown because that's a separate stat that you can spec into. But everything else about the skill, whether that be the healing amount, damage, radius, duration, make that increase with the amount of skill power that you have. This would make any amount of skill power that you have useful to you. You wouldn't lose the ability to use your mods in normalized modes either because your skills would normalize with your skill power and the mod requirements would not be there. It would give a reason to actually stack as much skill power as you can because you would see the result. And when it does come to modding the skills, a skill power build would get more effect out of those mods than someone who isn't a skill power build. To explain how this would work more in detail, brace yourselves because it's going to get pretty math intensive. So let's say you're making a Seeker Mine damage build. Now with 0 skill power and no damage mods equipped, let's just say it does 150,000 damage. At 0 skill power, you then decide to put a 10% damage mod on it. Well, you would get a 15,000 increase in your damage, which doesn't seem like too much, but then again, you're not a skill power build. But then let's say you add 3,000 skill power to that build. For the scaling ratio, we'll say that the Seeker Mine's damage increases by 0.05% for every 1 skill power. That would be a 150% damage increase, making your Seeker Mine instead hit for 375,000 damage. And then we finally add the 10% damage mod onto this amount, and you end up getting a 37,500 damage increase instead of the 15,000 that you would get using the same mod but with no skill power. So your mods would get more useful as you continue to stack skill power. The second solution I like even better than this one, and that is not to make the skills themselves scale with skill power, but instead the skill mods scale with skill power. So as you get more and more skill power, the mods that you equip will increase in their power along with that. To further explain this, let's go back to the Seeker Mine damage example. At 0 skill power, the damage increase mod gives you 10% extra damage on your Seeker Mine. Well, let's say that the mod scales with your skill power at a rate of 0.03% per point of skill power. So that exact same mod at 3000 skill power would give your Seeker Mine 100% more damage, 90% more than the mod would give you with no skill power. That seems like a lot, I know, but this is just an example of what they could do. If this were to be implemented, the mods could not be this powerful considering you could have more than one damage mod on at a time. And this would be the same idea for a radius increase mod or a duration increase mod. Each one could have a different scaling ratio with the amount of skill power that you have. This would also prevent skill power builds from having to remake their whole entire build when going into normalization because, again, the mods would scale with skill power, so the mods would be adjusted accordingly and not just flat out disabled if you don't reach a certain amount of skill power. Let's say they do implement the system and a certain skill becomes a bit too powerful with the right mod combinations. All they would have to do is decrease the scaling amount. Pretend that 0.05% for every point of skill power is overpowered for a certain skill. Well, then they could just change that number to 0.02% or whatever to nerf it, or increase that number to buff a skill. I think with this method, it would be really easy for them to rebalance any skills if any problems should occur. If you guys think that this is a good solution to the skill power problem, I encourage you to share this video with as many people as you can. I really want skill builds to be viable and fun again like they were in the first game. If you got this far into the video, feel free to leave a like, as well as subscribe to my channel for more content, and as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.